I don't think Calcutta is a safe place, but I would say it also depends on the area that you're living in. So I live in Salt Lake, and over here I feel quite safe because doesn't matter if it's evening or night, you can always like go and walk around or even cycle around the blocks.
Compared to other cities like Delhi and Bangalore, Calcutta is much safer because I think I can travel alone at least in the day.
Ever since childhood, I've
Ever since
faced
childhood,
cases of
I've faced
e-teasing,
cases
which
of
are still going
e-teasing, which
on
are still
now.
going on
And
now.
I really don't,
And
in fact,
I
in
really
fact, my
don't,
parents
in
even
fact,
don't
in
feel
fact, my
comfortable
parents really
letting
don't
me
feel
go out
comfortable
at
letting me
night.
go out at
And I
night.
also think it just
And I also
restricts me
think it
overall.
just restricts me overall.
Have a chat.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to JSJC TV. I'm Harleenn, your host and moderator. Today marks the third day of the annual United Nations sponsored Unite to End Violence Against Women campaign, which started on 25th November, the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women. But this is a great opportunity to discuss the recent NCRB report released in September 2021, which ranked Calcutta for the second year in a row as the safest metro city in India for women. So, is Calcutta really the safest Indian city for women? And if so, what makes it safe? Let me introduce my panelists for today. We have with us Dr. Aloparna Sengupta. She's an associate professor at Jindal School of Art and Architecture. Her area of teaching and research includes ethnographic studies of mobility practices, especially in metro cities. It's great to have you with us, Professor Aloparna. We have with us Ms. Monideepa Banerjee. She's a journalist from NDTV and has reported from and on Calcutta for more than 25 years. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ms. Banerjee. Seems like she's still on duty today. And we have Ms. Rudrani Dasgupta. She's currently the Global Safeguarding Manager at Girl Effect, a feminist NGO. Previously, she's also been part of ActionAid in Calcutta for about 4 years. Welcome to the show, Ms. Dasgupta. It's great to have you. Right. So let me start off right away, Ms. Dasgupta. So keeping the NCRB report aside, do you really feel that Calcutta is a very safe city? And more importantly, is it safe for all women?
Thanks for the question, Harleen, and very happy to be here. I think two things here. First, is Calcutta a safe city? Yes, but that comes with various caveats. It depends on the class, the social group, the caste you belong to. It depends on the areas that you're walking around in or you're living in. That depends on the modes of transport that you are using. So I think it depends on various factors. And coming from my position, which I recognize is a very privileged urban position, Calcutta's safety has always been looked at as a comparative from a very comparative angle. You know, when you look at the other metros. So yes, if I compare it to Delhi, it's definitely I feel safer on the streets of Calcutta. But if I would compare it to maybe a Bombay, maybe my answer is different because I think that Bombay definitely has uh, better systems in place for women, especially for late night travel. So I think, yeah, I think the answer is not a very straightforward one, if that helps. Thanks.
Yeah. No, I mean, even if you're talking about safety, it's a really broad concept. So we can't just say that, okay, this place is safe. We need to look at various parameters. So how do you think we can even define safety? Because it differs from person to person.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And working in safeguarding, I think the answer to defining safety or safeguarding in itself is a Pandora's box. Because how are you defining safety? Are you defining safety in the home? Are you defining safety at workplaces? Are you defining safety in schools and universities? So I think generally when we speak of safety in cities, we often almost refer to safety on the streets. But if we look at, for example, okay, let me give you this example. If I'm traveling in an Uber or in a taxi late at night in Calcutta, am I safe? Yes, I guess to a certain degree. But for example, if I'm walking down a very lonely, deserted city late at night, and there's an absence of proper street lighting, do I feel safe? So no. So I think the answer shifts from the various spaces that we inhabit within the city, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. My next question is to Miss Moni Deepa. You've lived in Calcutta for a really long time. And like Ms. Rudani said, the aspect of safety differs from place to place and from the context, even within Calcutta. So, why do you think it's even considered safe? Because some people would argue that the safety is coming from the laid back culture of Calcutta and, the people. So the real reason behind the relatively low rates of violence against women is the kind of culture this city has. So what do you think about that?
Harleen, thank you for having me on this program. And I'm always happy to talk about Kolkata. I'm not sure about the audio, so I can't say I could hear your question entirely. But what I understand is for the last 2 years, Kolkata has been declared the safest city. Since I'm from Kolkata, there is certainly a bias. And I do think it is safe. But I'd rather not go into comparisons. What I'd rather say is that there is always huge room for improvement. I have had to report on several cases of, assault on women in Kolkata, and therefore I'm hesitating about this safest city in the country label. I'm very happy NCRB data thinks so, but I'm not so sure. Because often, one of the problems that we face while reporting is that cases are not registered. So there are many people who report, and when they do, sometimes the police is resistant to the report.
I think we've lost Miss Moni Deepa. So I think what she was trying to say is that, of course, we need to take the data with a pinch of salt. Obviously, there are many cases that go unreported. But in trying to figure out what exactly makes the city safe, in any city, any metro city, what exactly are the components that make it safe? I would like to ask Ms. Alok Panna, um, do you think the infrastructure of a city plays a great role in creating safer or unsafe spaces for women? And does more infrastructure necessarily mean more safety for women?
Thank you, Harleen. Yes, I think that's a very important question. And this is something that we deal with often, right, in our courses or in our discussion with students. So there are two aspects to this, right? One is the normalized behavior. So over a period of time, over a passage of time, there are certain behaviors which become very set, and infrastructure will not be able to change that immediately, right? There is again a passage of time that is needed through which those behaviors, it's quite a long amount of time that we are talking about, that those behaviors might start changing. But at the same time, too, there is also this other argument where you say that, okay, we will provide pavements. There are no pavements, but that doesn't mean that people will start walking on the pavement immediately, because we are so used to walking on the road, we are so used to walking on the carriageway, right? It is a very normal condition for us. So giving a pavement or constructing a pavement as per guidelines, as per the required codes of accessibility, with proper street light, with visibility, proper levels of measurements of the lights. So for different types of road, different kinds of intersection, we have various measurements in terms of the lux of the lumen of the light condition. So all of that is infrastructurally that it should be provided, right? And it is very much needed. There cannot be an argument that because just by providing street light, we will not stop, eve teasing. And Calcutta possibly, well, this is more anecdotal. I haven't seen the NCRB report. Possibly has lesser cases of street assault in terms of rape, but Calcutta does have a lot of eve teasing, and this is coming.
Yeah.
We actually did audit for lower income neighborhoods last semester, last two semesters ago. Two of the groups who were working were from Calcutta, and there was a lot of discussion of eve teasing, right? So it is something which a lot of women have talked about. So yes, that is a behavior which can't be changed very easily using street lights or pavements or proper access, right? Some of the times the pavements are totally fenced. So if the person wants to escape, it's very difficult to escape. It has to go all the way to try to find a cut in the fence so that can get into the carriageway from the. So all of these things are very important. Implementation of infrastructure as per safety guidelines is extremely important. But yes, behavior change happens over a period of time. It won't be immediate.
Right. But and Professor, even comparing Calcutta to say Delhi, I mean it's infamous for being very unsafe. But you've based in Delhi for a while, and do you think the infrastructure in Delhi compared to Calcutta, that's the infrastructure sort of adds to making that an unsafe city, or how can it be modified to make it more safe?
Delhi, actually, if you look at Delhi and Calcutta, right, I mean, if you have to look at it spatially, right, so there are some very major differences. I'm not talking about newer parts of Calcutta, relatively newer parts like Newtown and all, which have a very different kind of morphology, okay? But if you look at, let's say, Goriahat, if you look at, other parts which have been there for a longer time, so even if with hawkers, there is a clear route. Okay, so that there is a clear path on which people can walk. So the hawkers and the pedestrian is actually together, right? So they are both have a space for themselves on the pavement. But if you look at your pavements in Delhi, a lot of these pavements do exist, but are in a very isolated situation, such that there is a huge service road on one side, and on the other side there is a arterial road or a sub-arterial road. So even in the night time, with perfect paving, perfect height of the pavement, the perception of risk is extremely high, especially for women, right? So you can have street lights, you can have but the morphology itself, the connection of the land use and the road itself is so poor. It's so isolated. So there is this a very famous anthropologist who has written on Brasilia, and his name is James Holston, and he writes that the street is nothing without the without the definition of what the edge of the street is. So at many times, so there are multiple factors, right, which together work. Perception of risk, perception of safety. They also may sometimes deter people from using. So I think Delhi has a lot of problems in the sense that it was originally planned to be a city for cars, right?
Yeah.
And it still is a city, and we are continuing to work with that city for cars. So the pedestrian infrastructure, even if it is there, is not something that you feel comfortable using at times, many a
Right.
times. Yeah.
And bringing this back to Calcutta, Ms. Dasgupta, if you'd like to comment on this, there are spaces, there's Sonagachi, which is the red light district, the largest, and there are places like, say, Shivpur. So these are like on the outskirts, and they're not really as centrally located. But so I mean, you can say that these places are unsafe. But even when talking about the main hub of the city, like Park Street and other places, I mean, we know the rape case that happened in 2020, 2012. So how do you think the poshness of a place and other things can affect the safety of a woman? Because I mean, Calcutta does not have a lot of nightlife, obviously, but even then, cases have happened in the center of the city. So what are your thoughts on this?
That's an interesting one, Harleen. First off, just a quick clarification. Shonagachi, the red light area, it isn't on the outskirts of the city. In fact, it is one of the most centrally located areas in Calcutta. So it's very, very accessible. It's right at the heart of the city. It's very, very well connected by all modes of transport. and it's in the sort of like a residential slash market hub. So just sort of clarifying that. I think a lot of the time, and I was very interested in what the professor just said about how we spatially perceive a city. And I think what's interesting is when it comes to women's safety, the community also plays an important role. For example, when we look at these densely congested areas where there's like a lot of population, a lot of people walking around, the perception of safety when it comes to women is largely positive because there's this sense of being surrounded by people, this sense of community, this sense that if I scream out for help, at least someone is going to reach out. Whereas if you look at more isolated residential areas, which are posh, so to speak, can often contribute to that feeling of isolation and danger. When I was looking at the walk stops right at the beginning of this panel, and there was this girl who said that she felt safer while walking around in Salt Lake. For a lot of people I know, and this is anecdotal, of course, not supported by hard data, but a lot of people have said that they would actually feel even more unsafe walking down an isolated Salt Lake lane because at night everything it's completely dark because that whole community, the whole market, or that whole sense of sort of people is missing because at night in these residential areas people retreat into their homes. The doors are closed, the curtains are down, and if you're walking down those streets you're essentially all alone. I have been to, for example, Shonagachi multiple times, when I've been working with women and especially working with sex workers, and that area is always bustling. So if you stand right at the heart of that area and you look around, there's this entire perception of being surrounded by community. There are the shopkeepers, there are the women, there are, there's so many people. So I think the presence of a community and its connection to women and their safety is something that cannot be ignored. And I think, and I think that sort of plays into the whole these isolated residential areas where the sense of community on the streets is largely lacking. Like I'll give you an example, a quick example, and then I'll pass on the mic.
I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
yeah, sure. Go ahead. No worries.
We're actually really running out of time. I'll have
Yeah,
to. I'm so sorry. I'll have to end this program
no
here.
problem.
I'd like to thank all my panelists for joining in today. Okay, Miss Moni Diva is also here. Thank you all so much for joining in and sharing your views with us. It was great to have all of you, and it's really a thought-provoking discussion. So thank you all for joining. I would like to thank all my viewers for joining in today, and I hope that we can now think about a woman's relationship with the city in a more nuanced way. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for more such productions on JSJC TV. Thank you.
Thank you.